Greetings, YouTubers and live videoers. It's me, Wayman29, and I come back on to do another series on the early Christianity. And I happen to realize I forgot the Jewish perspective of the whole thing, which was a large influence on the way the texts were written and where it came from. Now there was a lot of political wrangling going on in that time period, as there always was, and between the certain groups of Jewish people, and we're going to go over some of those and figure all this out. And I'll probably make some mistakes. These are Hebrew words, and I'm not all that good at pronouncing things. I can't even get YouTube usernames correctly, so forgive me if I make some mistakes, and you can post the corrections kindly in the comments section. So there's two schools of thought. There was the Hillel, Hillel, and the Shammai. And Shammai, Shammai. Shammai was a very conservative ruler. He was part of the 71 Bet Din, which is the Sanhedrin Council, and mainly they were in charge of temple rights, saying, making resolutions on what got done in a certain way and how things were run. And later, they would be replaced by the Zadokites, which were part of Herod's entourage, and basically a puppet of Sanhedrin, who did the will of Herod. And even though the real Sanhedrin had some influence, basically they were there to root out any kind of issues that might arise with people and rebellions and the Zealots. So, the Zealots, they were the people who did all the action without much care for the repercussions. It was all slice and dice to them. Hillel is the more liberal school of thought, and he was the Pharisee kind of teacher, rabbi aspect of the whole deal, and he dealt with Gentiles quite a bit. And this really upset Shammai, Shammai. I'll post a link for that, because he was so conservative. He didn't want any kind of dealings with Gentiles, because he started to see the toll that Hellenization and the Roman ideas were taking on Judaism. So he come up with the 8 commandments that he was going to enforce through the Bet Din, that said that Jewish people weren't allowed to do these 8 things. And at some point we'll get the 8 things and post them. And Hillel, he ended up coming into power in the Sanhedrin because he was a good teacher, and he was voted in, along with there was an Essene who was voted in as his vice president. And so they started dealing with Gentiles and doing things in a more diplomatic way. And Hillel's idea of teaching was one person at a time, establishing the kingdom of God, one person at a time, and making the whole nation of Israel priests, because that was seen as forcing the end. And so his disciples would head schools and trained children, and they blessed children and ordained them to where they be seen as priests. Not that they would actually perform any functions, but symbolic priests, shall we say. And if you're keen on it, that's how Christ worked, dealing with people. And a lot of the Hillel's teachings are seen along with the Essene teachings in the sayings of Christ, which is pretty interesting. The Shammai had a revolt. They trapped Hillel in the temple because they didn't like what he was doing, sliced and diced some of his disciples, so they went off to Galilee, and Hillel ended up staying the president of the Bet Din until his death, and Shammai, however, was like the mobster overlooking him. Now, a lot of people give Shammai a bad rap because, of the stuff that he did. However, if you think about it, he was so conservative that he was trying to preserve Judaism from all these outside influences. And along with all the stuff that was going on with Herod, and although Herod was dumping tons of money into temple projects, because he was a puppet of the Roman government, people still didn't like him all that much. Although they had a brand new temple and all kinds of things going on. And if you read in the biblical text, they have him dying in a most horrible way, where he ate pork and died of worms, which is the worst kind of death for a Jew. At any rate, you come to the idea of Christ, because here we have the puppet government, the Zadokites, performing these kinds of spy kind of things, and people always wondered how the trial of Christ happened at night. It was these people doing that. And one of the explanations that I came across in S. Madewell's website, he has it pretty much all mapped out, which is really interesting, and where I learned a lot of this Jewish history and from some of the resources that he had links to in some of the books. They were great. The view of Christ changes because the people seen it as them turning Christ over to spare the nation from the Roman repercussions that might occur if they didn't turn him in, which is the destruction of the temple, and the bodies would start piling up, which occurred in 70 AD anyways. However, a lot of the views, because of this, changes things if more people knew about this. And it's really sad that even myself, I didn't know anything about the Jewish politics prior to the start of Christianity and what led to all this. And Hillel's ideas of teaching and reaching out to the Gentiles really shows some precursor to the Apostle Paul and his ideas, and the whole idea of being born again was part of Hillel's teachings, because he believed that the negative impulse, when catered to, is very destructive, so you need to be born again in your thinking and in your mind so as to renew yourself to the good impulse and not the negative. So hopefully I did an okay job. Oh, the Essenes. The Essenes were part of this, along with the Pharisees, the Zealots, and the Sanhedrin, and the Zadokites. They were pretty much a third-party group, and you read some of the texts on what is thought to be ascribed to them in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they were pretty much the David Koresh's. They said, we're ultra conservative. We're gonna go out in the desert and stockpile weapons, and we're gonna wait until the end comes, or the Messiah comes, the day of vengeance, and then we'll see you guys later. And that's what happened. They went up to help fight against the Romans, 70 A.D. at the temple, and they were also wiped out along with Qumran, where they were to have thought to reside. Views on that are now changing, but then they were absorbed back into the population, because a lot of people wonder, well, what happened to them? Were they all killed off? No. You could be an Essene and live just like any other Jew. However, you just had different types of purity laws and law codes. And women were also Essenes, and there are articles out there on how women even contributed to very high-profile aristocratic women, attributing to the Pharisee movement and funding their schools. Which, if I'm not mistaken, I thought even the Herod's wife at one point gave money to the Pharisees and paid their fine when they wouldn't pay tribute to Rome. So that's a little bit of background. I'll be posting some links to all this. Take care, YouTubers. Take care of yourself and each other.